Okay, today I am going to be showing you how I made this delicious bread I am calling apple banana walnut bread. I am so happy with the way this turned out after several trials and errors with my vegan baking. So as you can see, I am using 3 very ripe bananas. And I had these bananas probably about a week. They weren't really ripe when I first purchased them at the grocery store. So I held on to them, and I even put them in the refrigerator, and that seemed to turn them a little bit browner faster. So just, if there's some brown spots on there, just cut those off. Get these all peeled off. Take any ugly parts off, and then we're gonna be mashing these bananas down. And one thing that's great about having these very ripe bananas is that they do mash very easy. So now, of course, I have to go find me a fork. I tried to have everything together, but you know how that goes. I tried to put everything out, but I actually was doing this as I went. I was making, I have my little notepad over there, and so I was jotting down the recipe that I, as I created it. So this was a test, and I only was going to share this if it worked. And thankfully, the good news is that it did turn out really good. So I'm just going through and mashing these bananas down, and you can use a blender for this part. You can use a potato masher for this part. However you want to do this to get the bananas all mashed up and ready for the next step. So our next ingredient is applesauce, and we're going to use a half a cup of applesauce. And we're adding in, this is a Granny Smith apple that I chopped up in small pieces. Of course, I peeled it first. I would say between a small to medium sized apple, which yielded me, this apple, I would say it was about a medium size, and this yielded me about 1 1/4 cup of apple pieces. So it really just depends on what size the apple is that you get. But I did use a Granny Smith apple. And now we're going to add 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And of course, I figured out that I had the wrong size spoon. So 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, which I like using the lemon juice way better. A previous recipe that I tried used apple cider vinegar, and I found that the lemon juice was better and just added a little bit of flavor with it. It mixed well with everything that we put in here. So now we're going to put a half a cup of almond milk, and you can use any plant-based milk that you would like. I prefer to use almond milk. we're using cane sugar. We're adding 1 cup of cane sugar. I like to use cane sugar, trying to get away from the refined sugar and just easing away from that. And so cane sugar is what I am trying to work with now. And if you're fine with sugar, you can actually replace this with brown sugar. Then I'm going to use 1/4 cup of molasses, which brown sugar is simply molasses and sugar. So if you use refined sugar, you can just use brown sugar, but I'm going to use it. I wanted to try it this way. It almost looks like caramel. And one trick that I discovered when I was making this, now we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. Half a teaspoon of allspice. Of course, we need some yummy vanilla, so 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. And that bottle was almost empty, so I just poured the rest of it in there. But 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla is just fine. Now we need 1/2 cup of oil, and I use olive oil in pretty much everything that I cook, so of course I'm going to use olive oil, but you can choose to use any oil that you desire. Let's get everything mixed and incorporated. But one of the things I was going to say, and was a trick that I learned. Well, here we go. For the oat flour, I wanted to try this instead of just using all white flour, so I used 1 3/4 cup of oat flour. I ended up, I started off with just 1 cup, but then after I got everything mixed up and realized I needed a little bit more flour, I came back in and added 3/4 cup of additional to the recipe. So the total amount of oat flour is 1 3/4 cup. So let me go ahead with what I was going to say. The trick that I learned as I was making this recipe is to taste the batter before baking it. It helped me to see how sweet it was going to be, because the last time I tried to make banana bread, when it came out, it was absolutely horrible because I could taste the baking soda and baking powder. So tasting the batter helped me. So with the white flour, which you can use all-purpose, I didn't realize I had bread flour, but you can use all-purpose flour, 1 1/4 cup of this. So the last time I made this, it was not very good because I could taste the baking powder and baking soda. So the great thing about vegan baking is that you're not using raw ingredients. You're not getting egg in there. So I was able to taste the batter, and that is the trick that helped me to know if this, how this was going to turn out. And once I got through it, it tasted really sweet and good, and so I knew that it was going to turn out. So now we're going to come in with some pink Himalayan salt, and we're going to add, let me see, how much did I add? 1 teaspoon of pink Himalayan salt. Like I said, guys, I was making this as I went, so jotting my notes down. I started with a base recipe, and then I just built it and changed it to tweak it to my liking. And so we're using 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and then we're going to use 1 teaspoon of baking soda, which I am actually running to grab in the refrigerator. And these 2 ingredients have the ability to overpower your recipe, so it's important to put enough other ingredients to mask that flavor. 3 tablespoons of flax meal. Now I will say I started off with a base recipe from the Buddhist chef, and then I've seen other different videos, and so I kind of incorporated what he had and I changed it up a bit to my liking. So with this recipe, you can be creative, make it how you want, but it's good to have a starting place. And so, I made quite a few changes to the recipe to add more flavor for me. Now, I had never baked his recipe. I needed something to help me kind of get some guideline for proportions of the ingredients. And so I started with the base there. Now I'm doing 2/3 cup of walnut. Okay, so now it's time to combine the dry and the wet ingredients to make our yummy batter. Tastes good, it smelled good, but at this point I could tell it was a little bit runny, and so this is where I came back in and added some more of the oat flour. And I really like using the oat flour. It just has a good consistency. I've used it for making gravy, and I like the way it gets creamy, and so that's why I wanted to use that. So this is where I'm adding additional flour. So this is a magic ingredient, I think. Some good old pancake syrup, coming in with the 1/4 a cup of pancake syrup. And the reason why I added this is because I had tasted the batter and I could taste a little hint of baking soda. And so I wanted something to mask that flavor and cover that up and just kind of incorporate everything. And so that did the trick. I put that in there and I could no longer taste that. So now it's time to put everything in the pan. You can use parchment paper if you prefer. I wanted to do this, just oil the pan, because when I've used parchment paper before, it kind of messed up the form of the bread. And so I just wanted to skip that step altogether. As long as you oil it very nicely, you should be able to get the bread out of the pan without any problems. This recipe makes a lot of batter, and the bread rises. So this has turned out beautifully. It's nice and high, it rose just like bread. I already trimmed off a little piece on the end to taste it, and it tastes so good. I'm gonna try it. I need a bread knife. So this is a little bit tricky trying to cut this without having a bread knife. The top is a little bit crunchy, but the inside is nice and moist. When I get a bread knife, it'll be so much easier. It's got chunks of apple. So I'm gonna taste this, and I've already tasted it, but I'm gonna taste it again. It's so good. Finally, y'all, it's worked. This is really good. It's sweet. I can taste the banana. I can taste the apple. But what I don't taste is the baking soda and the baking powder like I did on my last time I tried to make this. So this is really good. It's moist. It's not too heavy. It's just good. So try this. You can have it for breakfast. You can have it for dessert. It's edible. Now it's a little moist inside. It's not falling apart moist. Well, Let me see if it's falling apart. A little bit maybe, because it's kind of, but it does hold consistency. See, but it's not too dense. There's airy, it's airy enough. So I cooked it for an hour and 10 minutes. I maybe could have cooked it a little bit or baked it a little longer, but it's done enough for me. So try this. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and visit grownandvegan.com for a list of the ingredients and directions for doing this recipe.